Okay, this video is going to talk you through how to use some of the functions on your calculator. So I'm just going to run through the most common ones. If you want to square or cube a number, the buttons are the x squared and the x cubed. So for instance, if I wanted to do 9 squared, I would hit my 9, and then my x squared button, and then equals. If I wanted to do 10 cubed, I would hit my 10, my x cubed button, and then equals. To do square root, you do this button here. So square root of 64 is 8. Square root of 60 is this. Now when this happens in any aspect of using your calculator, where you get a root or maybe something in terms of pi, if you hit this SD button, that will change it into a decimal. So that changes between this, which is what's called a third, and this, which is a decimal. Okay, if you want to do a root other than a square root, there is a special button for cube root, and it's right above the square root button. So you do shift and square root, and that brings up your cubed root. So cube root of 27, for instance, is 3. If you want to do a root above that, or a power above that, we use this button. So to do a power, so say 8 to the power of 6, I would do 8 to the power of 6. Or if I wanted to do maybe say the 4th root of something, so shift, and that button brings up my different roots. So the 4th root of 16 is 2. To do your fraction button, this is your fraction button here. What you want to do is just make sure you use the arrow keys to move between the buttons. So to do a third, 1, press down, 3, and then before you do the rest of your sum, press off by using the arrow key. If I wanted to multiply that, say you wanted to do a mixed number, shift and the fraction button. That brings you your mixed number. So I could then do 6 and 3 quarters. That equals 9 over 4. If I want to change that into a mixed number, I use my SD button again, but I do shift and SD, and that changes it between a mixed number and a top heavy, as you can see. To put it as a decimal, just hit the SD button normally, and that gives it as a decimal. If you want to do a negative number, this is your negative button. So -6 times -3. Please watch out though that if you do, for instance, -2 squared, it gives you -4. That is incorrect. The reason is because the calculator squares and then makes it negative because it's following BODMAS. So to do the square of a negative number, put brackets around it. Here are your bracket keys. So -2 close bracket squared equals, and that will give you your correct answer. The brackets can be useful if you're doing different bits of a sum, because your calculator will follow BODMAS. So for instance, if I type in 10 plus 3 times 6, what my calculator does is it does the 3 times 6 first, which is 18, and then adds the 10 onto it, which is 28, because it knows to multiply before adding. So if what you really wanted there was the 10 plus 3 done first, you would use your bracket to do the 10 plus 3 and then times by 6. What you can also do is use this button down the bottom, which is your answer button. That will bring up your last answer. So for instance, I could do 10 plus 3 equals, and then I could hit answer times 6, and that would give me my last answer. Or if I cleared my screen, but I wanted the square root of that, I could hit my square root button and use the answer button, and that would give me the square root of 78. Again, I can use my SD to flip between it being a root and a decimal. You can use your fraction button to do sums. So for instance, you might have something like 6 times 3 plus 2 over 5 take away 1. So if you got a sum like that, you could actually type that into your calculator using your fraction button, and that would work it out for you. Alternatively, you could do that with your brackets, 6 times 3 plus 2 divided by 5 take away 1. So using the top and bottom of a fraction works the same way as using brackets around each bit of the sum. Now, the last thing really that you would need to see is how to fix your calculator if it goes into an incorrect mode. So if we look here, sometimes your calculator can get stuck on stat mode, which means that your fraction button won't work properly. So you can hit 1 for comp and that should turn it back to normal. You also can do shift and mode to go into setup if it's still not working properly. And there's two important things here. Sometimes if you are doing trigonometry, if you've reached that point in maths, your calculator could be in radians mode, number 4, which would give you an incorrect answer unless you're at A level. So you would want to pick 3 to turn it into degrees mode, and you can see the D on the top of your screen to indicate that it's in degrees mode. Shift and mode, if my calculator's stuck on anything other than that, which is making it hard to use, pick number 8 for normal and then just pick number 1. So between picking your normal mode and picking your mode in 1, that should get your calculator working properly again if it starts acting up during an exam. How to use the memory function, I will quickly just show you. Now this is a bit more advanced, but certainly if you're at GCSE, you maybe want to use the memory function. So say I had an answer, so 9 times 6 is 54. I can store that answer in my calculator to use it again. So rather than just using my answer button, so say I was going to work out a couple of things and then combine them. If you do shift and then RCL, which uses the store above it, you can see the STO has come up on the screen. And then do you see these letters in red? You can pick any of those. So A, and it says answer into A. I could then do, for instance, 6 times 2, and I could do shift, store, and B, answer into B, and I could do 9 squared, and I could do shift, store, and C, answer into C. To call those up again, you use your red button to get the red letters, so alpha A equals, alpha B equals, alpha C equals. So if I wanted to do, for instance, a sum, I could do alpha C times alpha B divided by alpha A. So that would do 81 times 12 divided by 54, which would give me 18. The last thing that you might want to use on your calculator, the last two things, first of all, pi. Pi is down here above the times 10 to the power of, and you have to use shift to get your pi. So if you wanted to do like pi times 6 squared, use shift in there to get your pi, times 6, and use your square button. That will come up like that, and your SD will change it to a decimal. This button in its regular format is actually standard form. So for instance, 2.2 times 10 to the power of 6. That's your standard form. And you can use that for calculations. Trigonometry, if you've reached that point, here's your sine, cos, and your tan. And your inverse functions you can see are above them on the shift key. So if we had, for instance, we wanted to get the sine of 30 degrees. You don't even need to close the bracket, it'll work without it. I just hit sine 30 equals, and that gives me my value. If I wanted to do the inverse cos of 0.8, again, shift and cos to get the inverse cos, and then your 0.8 equals. Now, if you're multiplying things in trig, do just make sure that you do close the brackets. So for instance, sine of 30, if I wanted to then do times 6, I would need to make sure obviously that I'd closed my bracket after the 30. And I think that that covers everything that you might need to see on the calculator. Obviously, if there's any other functions that you think you need, just let me know.